So who has now read these instructions for the activity? Everybody. Okay. Who is puzzled now and has no idea what we're going to be doing?
The same group.
Oh, no. Okay. Drat. Okay, so I'm going to borrow this one just so I can read from it. Okay. So this one about ideas for splitting stories, discard this one. This is just like a reference thing that you could use if you were thinking, how can I split this big story? Okay, so that's not what we're going to do in the practical exercise. This one that says practical exercise at the top, this is the one about the practical exercise. Now, at the top it says concept. All right, now the reason this is, you are going to work to try and think about some user stories for a new product concept. Now, it might be that this product actually exists in the world, we don't know. But the product concept is people are getting married and they're having weddings. And you know how you get a special photographer to take the pictures? Yeah? All right, okay. So sometimes that can be expensive. But also, that photographer cannot be everywhere at once. So there are lots of little moments in the wedding, more intimate things about how the friends are talking and things that photographer may not capture. So the idea is that we would have a way of inviting our guests to the wedding to take their own photographs and make them into an amazing wedding album of photographs. Yeah? Does that idea make sense? Could be. So there are some epic stories here. Happy couple, invite guests to contribute their photos. So before the wedding, we need to let people know to bring a camera, to bring their camera phone, okay, and like what they would do with the photos and how they would send the photos, and some instructions for those people who might be less used to using the internet and things like this. And then, so that's one. Epics are large user stories. They're like big. So these are just like headlines of ones that you might do. So there's inviting, there's people uploading photographs, there's people selecting photographs to share. So imagine if you got a lot of photographs of your wedding and you didn't look so good in the pictures. Would you want to like leave some of them out? There's like some ones of the beautiful bride and her makeup is not looking the best, or there's some, if you've ever taken photographs and there are some with people with their eyes shut, you maybe want to edit the album to leave some things out, okay? Or there may be, looking drunk, people in an argument, this kind of thing, people dancing badly, these kind of things can happen at a wedding. You might want to edit some things out. And you also might want to put on the photographs like some comments. You might want to tag them. You might want to say, oh, this is Uncle Ivan in this photograph, and or you might want to make a comment about what is happening. So these are kind of some headline stories for this product. But what I'd like you to do in your groups is to think about smaller user stories. Now, that's why I've given you some index cards. What I'd like you to do is to write some stories on the cards. And obviously, you write one story per card. And what it would be nice to do as we get to the end of this workshop, and it's a bit crazy now with the time because we started late and I don't know what time we finish, so I'm not sure how long we're going to do this for. But what I want you to think about is not only what the stories could be, but also think about some problems, some issues that could happen, like what if nobody contributes any photographs? Or what if there are like so many photographs we run out of storage? Or what if there are issues where we've taken a photograph and it has somebody from the hotel that doesn't want to be in the photograph? There could be all sorts of different scenarios to think about. So the main activity I'd like us to do is to do this. Now, Who was it who said that it wasn't clear after reading the... It was you, yes. Is it any clearer now? Yeah. Is it clearer now? Sort of. Okay. Right now, I'm going to go and quickly look to see if I can get to some of the slides that talk about this. Because then I'd like... Right, so it's a workshop. You're going to be doing work. That's a bit about me. That's a bit about Unruly Media. We asked about you. Workshop aims. I do also want to talk a little bit about personas. And you're thinking to yourselves, hey, we have these index cards, but we also have a giant piece of paper. What is the giant piece of paper for? Right, there is a thing that I want us to draw to help think about the personas, and we'll do that in a minute. But I have to show you that because there's more stuff about user stories. I'm just going to skim through this very fast. There's a little chick. Why? Why is there a little chick? Because one of the core principles about user stories is that, and we have this proverb, you know, basically a bird in the hand is more valuable than some birds out in the wild, because you have that. So the idea with user stories is to build something that you really can start using soon, rather than have a long period where there's nothing delivered. So software is your bird in the hand, and you try to have lots of little birds that you can use. And if you have small stories, also it's a bit clearer what they're supposed to do. And they get delivered more quickly. Can you think of any other benefits of slicing stories to be small stories? Reduces risk. It's easier to remove something. Yeah, if you only did a small thing, you can get rid of it quickly as well, yes.
Easier to share the load.
Easy to share the load. You can have more people working on different things, yeah.
Quicker feedback.
Say that again?
Quicker feedback.
Quicker feedback, yeah. So if you make something small, you can put it in front of somebody. You can get them to say what they like or don't like about it. So there are a lot of benefits to splitting stories. And what you want to do is really to keep releasing and improving the stories. It's ideal if you could have consumable slices of software. So something that people can start to use, not, I've made these components, but they're not linked to anything yet, and I made these components and they're not linked to anything. So the idea is that it's something you can use, try, and get feedback from. This is a principle from XP, which is do the simplest thing that can possibly work. So always be thinking, if somebody says, this is a thing when you have a conversation about user story, and they say, hey, I'd like this fantastic wedding planning software thing, then you kind of slow down. What would be an even simpler thing than that? And so you're always trying to think, what would be simpler? Can we take some details away? Can we make something easier? And the very smallest story is something that is testable. If it doesn't do anything, it isn't really a story. If there's no behavior that you could, if you deliver some software that doesn't do anything different than what the previous software did, it's not really a story. So questions you can ask to help you think about how to split a story. You can be thinking about some things like, if it's a user-facing piece of software, you can think about, what are the details that I see on the screen? How does the user interact with that? Also, how much do we need to protect the user from doing something stupid? And like, how many platforms are we going to make this work on? Does it work on a phone? Does it work on a Windows machine? Does it have to work with Internet Explorer 8? So there could be all of these different things we think. Now, in order to have user story conversations, normally you need business people and technical people to be having a conversation. It's not just all technical people, it's not just all business people, it's that mixture. And the reason that's important is because the technical people can think about lots of different options of ways to implement a story, and so you want to get them involved. But the business knows more clearly what they need and what will suit them and what they will be able to use. There is a quote, and I've forgotten who the quote is from, but basically, you are not your user. And the idea of this is when you think about making some software, you're not really your target audience most of the time. So you need to think about who is the user, and there are techniques from user experience to help you figure this out. And one of the things that you can do is to try to understand user personas. Normally you develop personas from research and workshops. This is an example of a persona that we use for one of the products I'm working on at the moment. You can see there are a lot of words there, but the shortcut for the persona is really this person's photograph, and we know that that's Charlotte, and we know what kind of role she represents in the organization, what kinds of things that person is interested in. You have to put yourself in their shoes. See, these are the kinds of shoes that Charlotte would wear. They're probably not the kinds of shoes that you would wear, okay? You have to think about it from their point of view. And so what I would like you to do for this wedding planning system that we're going to work on is I'd like you to create this thing called an empathy map. So the big paper, that's this, can I just lift? So can you see how this is a big picture? So don't just draw a very tiny empathy map in the corner. Use the space to make one of these. So you put the user in the middle. So you could draw a picture of what you think that person might look like. You don't have to be great at art to do this. It can look like this person or worse. What you're interested in is the kinds of things that that person sees, that that person will hear. You're interested in their world. And in the instructions about this, I put some personas here. So one persona is Kim. Kim is the anxious bride. She wants this system to be perfect. She doesn't want any photographs to go out there that are not beautiful. So she has some concerns around how this system is used. Then you have Jeff. I don't know if you even have this name, Jeff, around here, but Jeff, he's from an older generation, and he's a non-technical person. He wants to help with the wedding, he wants to share his photographs, but he's never really used things like Facebook and stuff like that before. So you've got a kind of an audience at any wedding where you've got quite a lot of relations of the family who are from an older generation. And then you also have the opposite. You have Alex. He's always on social media. He's always tweeting and Facebooking and Instagramming his food and everything like this. And so what I would like you to do is to pick one of those personas and try to draw something that helps you to have empathy for that person. And then you're going to think about the user stories that that person would like to see in the system and write those on cards. Does that seem clear? Work in pairs, yeah. So it's ideally work in pairs with the person next to you, because it's easier. Yes, do not this crazy pair. Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much.
What must be like?
Yeah, but the rest won't take very long. It's like virtually my timing is out now, so it doesn't really is fine to say, you know, go out for 5 or 10 minutes, come back, and we restart. Yeah.
Create an empathy.
One person, yeah, just pick one of them.
Vi ste sjeli to.
Šta ste uzeli šefa? Pa lakše vam je uzeti kit. Šta ona razmišlja? Šta ona razmišlja? Gle ovo, šef je non-tech dečko, dakle, on je pretopni i onda, kaj ti je taj internet? O tom razmišlja, kaj je to internet?
Njemu treba kompjuter samo. I tipka.
Znači, ona stavlja ne user story, nego neku...
Da, ne kužim. Njegove probleme. Njegove
Da
zanimanje.
ga skužiš.
Pa mislim što ona žele vidjeti.
Sebe želi vidjeti. Čekaj, možda zapišemo user story, kako mi user
Are we
story?
allowed to stick things on there, do you think? Oh, okay, all right. I will ask people to stick their picture up. Then we go for coffee, then we come back with the user story part.
Šta vidi, everybody is happy.
Luda. Luda. Luda.
Ovdje je crazy. Što ćemo ti slobodno kopirati?
Do you know what you're doing? Do you need any help?
We think so.
Active. What is he? Is he worried about anything? He's and maybe he's thinking maybe I won't do it. You know, who may struggle to help this plan work. So they might be worried about like use. So they want it to be easy. Maybe they need help texts, you know, to how it works. So you start thinking about. Oh, you're going with using the index cards, but you will need some of these for the stories. So, yeah, okay. Oh, okay, all right. So, we're going to have a coffee break in a few moments. And then, but I would like you to come back, ideally, to do the next part. One thing that I would ask you to do so that we can share some of these pictures is to, there's some sticky tape, it's green. If you can use it to stick the pictures either to a wall near you or quite, you know, like a space. It should be okay. This is special tape that will not do any damage. So on your way out, stick it up, and then we will start again in 10 minutes. When we come back, we will be thinking about the actual stories from the persona's point of view. Okay, so shall we start again? Now, before we get into the next piece of the exercise, it would be useful to find out if you had any questions about what you were doing. Like, did you struggle with doing this empathy map? Yes. What was difficult about it?
I didn't know what those questions meant.
Yeah, because they're very high-level questions. This is the kind of thing that can happen with user stories. If you pick up a user story and you see just only a few words written in a card, and you weren't in the conversation, then it's meaningless to you sometimes. So it's very important with user stories to be involved in the communication, the conversation. And if you ever pick up a user story and you say, oh, it says this on the card, so I'll just guess what that means, then you can end up building the wrong thing. So it's quite important that when something is, when people are working with user stories, that they're able to go and back and have conversations again. Now, to get back to talking about the empathy map, you're thinking about this persona, this person. You're trying to think about them as representing a group of people with there are similar people like them at the event. There are similar people like them using the software. So you're trying to generalize them a bit by thinking about a particular person. You're trying to kind of think about their experience so that you can make the system better. But with these questions, what kinds of things do you hear? What kinds of things do you see? Can you share, maybe in your group, what was a thing that you thought, the persona that you wrote for, what does somebody see?
Just a sec. Doesn't this exercise loses its goal? Basically, what I'm doing, I'm emulating the feeling of a persona. So basically, I'm not defining what that persona sees. I'm defining what I think that persona sees.
Yes.
So that doesn't make sense for me to do it. So either doing it through an interview to gather the information would make sense. Otherwise, this is basically, as a programmer, would do something for a non-techie person.
Yeah, you're making a really good point. So this activity, in the slides, I say you should do proper user research. So you shouldn't just, if you're on your project, don't go away and kind of just make things up, imagine things. You really should do this through having interviews with users and trying to understand what they do see and what they do say in their world. So this shouldn't be done like we're doing it now in a real setting, in a real project.
So back to the old school, so joint requirements planning and old school everything.
Sorry?
Basically, what we would do in this case, we have real world scenario here is we would be working with the end users with such persona.
So imagine you were actually interviewing that person and trying to capture
Get specifications and have general idea up front.
No, I'm not saying this.
Haven't we done that?
Say that again?
Haven't we done that?
Have you done that?
Yeah.
In this activity?
Where I'm aiming, if I'm trying to figure out what that persona wants, up front I know what they want. Therefore I have all the specs and I'm starting to work. So where is agility there?
I'm confused about what your question is. I think what you're saying is, would you only do these things if you had a lot of specifications? Is that what you're saying?
Let's do it this way. We conduct interviews with whatever people. Okay, that doesn't matter how many people. And then we conclude, okay, this is what they see, what they want, what they think, feel, see, hear, whatever. Then we define what we need to offer to them.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So we're going into micromanagement, so going really deep.
Okay.
So that means screw agility. Sorry for my language, but screw agility we have designed up front, and we know what we need to do.
Yeah, so the reason I'm trying to understand your question is I want to repeat it because I'm being recorded. Sure. And so otherwise any of this will not make sense to somebody. So yeah, exactly. So I'm trying to summarize your long question. Okay, so your long question is this activity something you would only do in a design up front? Is that around,
It looks like that.
Okay, so I'm saying, no, imagine that you could talk to a user and just do this, but without doing all of the specs. This is just a way to interview somebody. You make this chart, and then you could stick that up in your work area where you're developing software incrementally, and imagine that then you are doing user testing of every iteration of the stories. So you can use this kind of technique in an agile setting. The thing is not to just think, well, this technique is just wedded to doing all of that other stuff. Does that make sense?
To some extent. Because
Okay, this is quite an in-depth question, so maybe we should talk about it afterwards. I want to kind of get back to the kind of like, where are we in this activity? So what I was actually asking then was, can you give me an example of something that you put on the what do you see side? Who can give me an example?
yeah, we had nice pictures. In this case, we took Jeff, the non-techie guy.
Yeah?
Nice pictures. What the hell did I write it?
Everybody is using it.
Uses it and can save money.
Oh, yeah, okay. So Jeff is kind of the kind of guy who might like to save money.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's kind of one and perhaps the selling point of this system is to say, oh, so I don't have to have a lot of things developed and I don't have to pay a professional guy, and so that might be a way to make him interested in using this.
Yep.
Okay, what about, did anyone have something which you had on the things that that person hears? So did you have things that you... Oh, so a lot, yeah.
Facebook upload things like that because he doesn't know anything about it.
Yeah, so there would be a lot of jargon, unknown words, and then the guy has to think, well, does he reveal that he does not know what that means when somebody says megabytes or gigabytes, you know, what does that mean? Or, you know, like, so
He doesn't have a digital photo at all.
so then how would that affect how you might build the product? You might need to think about using very simple language and little pop-ups or something of what each term means and that kind of thing. What did people have in picking another example? What about in the think and feel section? Did you have anything? Who had something in that area?
I don't want to be stressed about it.
Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah, you want you don't want to spoil your enjoyment of an event. You don't want to have to worry that it's not going to work. You want to know that it's safe. Those kinds of things. And what about some of the things at the bottom? So what would be a pain for somebody? Did you have a pain on your...
Things to learn how to use it.
Yeah, like, so it's going to take some effort on my part, or I'm a bit worried that it might. And what about a gain? Anybody have a gain on the system? Something that you would benefit? Multitude of pictures. Yes, yeah. So you could, yes, you would have a really broader view of the event. So now what I'd like us to do, so I had a few more slides I wanted to go through, and then I thought we would do some stories. So one thing that you can do is in an agile environment is try to make these personas present. So it helps to remind you of like the people who are out there who will be using the system. But as well, you need to try to make sure that you are testing it with those people. So it's not like just something, we put some personas up. Where I work, we have a user experience guy who works with us, and he calls these personas that you stick on the wall and then you ignore. He calls those zombie personas, because what you don't want to do is do this upfront effort and have some paper on the wall and then forget about it. It's a waste if you do this. So it's very important that you not only you keep your personas alive by feeding them, and by feeding them, this is by doing user testing, by getting impressions, by checking that the product really does work for those people. What we do, we have our personas above on our board. Some places I've been to have these giant cardboard cutouts of personas. I don't know where you get those from. You probably don't need them. And we also have, on each story that we work on, we have some stickers, like which represent which personas the story is relevant to. So sometimes we do that, and that helps us to remember what kinds of testing we might need to do. So why am I talking about any of this in relation to splitting stories? Well, the reason is because in terms of thinking about how to split stories, there is one huge area which is very difficult to do in a workshop setting at a conference, and we're not really looking at it in this workshop, and that is what kinds of software solutions. Because you've got so many different backgrounds here, we wouldn't be able to kind of think about how the software works underneath, like think about all the components and layers and things like this. But this is often the area that you might get into to try and work out how to slice a story. So I want to talk about other parts of the story that you can iterate on. So there are a number of, and I like to think of them as a dial that you could dial up or down on stories. So your very basic story, it works, and then you can make more versions of the story that are safer, prettier, easier to use, that kind of thing. So that's why I'm concentrating on this user interface stuff. So you might need to think about how safe is it for the person to use. So if you think about this wedding photograph thing, you might need to think about what happens if somebody's upload gets terminated halfway through. Does it save the session? Does it drop the session? There are those kinds of things. You might have, particularly for Jeff, this would be, you have to think about how much help needs to be in the system for it to work. Now, you can make a version of the system which could upload photographs and Jeff would not be able to use. And then you could make it better and more helpful and easier. And that would be a whole area of very small slices of story work to improve the system. And then another area you can think about is how beautiful it looks. So you can make a very bare bones system and it can work functionally. And then you have to start thinking about all nice things like how slidey something is, or whether there's a special effect when something is produced, or whether you can see like a rough cut of something and then it becomes fully present. There are different things you can think around this to help you think about the stories. And then when you're making a system, quite often you will fake out bits. So there'll be a system that works, but some bits of the system won't work, but they'll still be there. So that you can have menus and windows and things that look like they might lead to real functionality, but don't. And this is something that in Lean Startup you might actually start to see if people use something before building it. So, if people keep clicking on a menu option that you haven't implemented yet, then maybe you can start implementing it when you get data that people want to use that thing. So now, we did the persona empathy map. Now I'd like you to actually use the index cards to try and think of lots of user stories. Thinking about your system, thinking about it from the point of view of the persona that you were doing in the exercise. Can you think about user stories, things that you could implement separately? So remember, this workshop is about splitting and slicing stories. So if you write a story which is just I upload photos, that's an epic story. You want to think about the small, useful steps and how it would work, and you might need to sketch some user interface to think about it, but try to think about very, very small steps towards having the whole system there. something that will work, but not everything. Do you understand? Okay. So take now 10 minutes to work back in your original groups, and now start to write some user stories. You don't have to write a specific template. Don't worry about whether it's as a user, I want this so that. Just think about what you're trying to split apart. And try to maybe even pick 1 or 2 stories and then make them smaller and smaller and smaller. Okay? Do you need a normal pen though? That's the only thing.
Probably. This one takes a lot of space.
I
have one.
Yeah, okay, all right. And I don't have one because it's already...
Yeah.
You may be better off using like a normal pen and not a marker pen, but like just because that these are quite small cards and yeah, cool. Because the marker pens are quite big, you might want to use just a normal pen. It might be easier. You can fit more on the card if you want. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, there's one with the book.
Yeah.
See, I will say this at the front. Okay, that's okay.
Is that a part of what we were trying to create? Will that be a part of the song?
So this is one example of how to focus on one interface, because of course the next would be...
Yeah.
Are we writing the user stories for the software itself?
Yes.
Or from the point of view of the user? Because we have a user,
Yeah.
he's a guy not really literate to anything.
Yeah. So what does he want the system to do?
Exactly. What do you want the system to do? The online system, the web-based system.
Yeah. So so some epic things are I can upload a photograph, I can comment on a photograph, but how is it going to work? Is there a small version that you can do before you add more helpfulness and more slickness? Kind of.
So from our point of view, because he will ask for help, so he won't do anything with the system actually. So he will perhaps view the pictures in the
perhaps. Yeah. Okay.
He will even comment in the system. So let's start from the beginning. So he will ask for help his grandchildren to help him upload the photos. Okay. Probably.
Yeah.
So maybe we should focus on the viewing of the pictures. Yeah, probably.
Okay. So I'm just trying to think. Right. You write something that's wrong.
Oh, and then you check if they're paying attention.
If you write, okay, so I want, and you write like something, and the guy goes, no, and they grab the card and the pen, and so you can try that.
Okay, let's try that.
You'll still say yeah.
Web.
Put picture on.
How are you getting on? Okay.
No? Why not?
Don't use pigeons anymore.
You,
Write
okay?
down a
Imagine the
few
logistics of having one
stories
pigeon per person.
From this
this
guy.
point
Yeah.
and in general
Okay.
Unbelievable. There are a lot of small user stories
behind
for
that.
such a simple epic.
Exactly. There are actually a lot. Yeah. All right. Has anyone run out of cards? No. Okay. If you run, there's still a few left here.
I should be doing this with Carrie Ann. Because yesterday she was saying, no. If you break it too much, then it's no longer useful. Right? We're doing it.
Oh my god!
I think we can break this down to 2-hour increments.
And there's no too small.
Exactly.
So if you think continuous delivery, there is not any too
we were
small.
arguing about this yesterday
Yeah.
at dinner. That's how geeky we are, right?
Yeah.
I can be geekier.
Oh, okay. I can't.
Okay. So apparently this is 10 minutes are up, which is... Can you count how many did you create? Who had more than 4 stories? Who had more than 10 stories? Who had more than 20 stories? What number did you have that's more than 10? 14. So you all had 14 in 3 different groups. Oh, excellent. Okay. So then it's a good thing I didn't have a prize, because then I would have to choose between 3 groups. So I didn't have a prize. But I should have a prize next time. So can I ask you, is there a story that because you did the empathy map first, that you thought of, that you probably wouldn't have thought of normally? Yes? Can I have a few, who will be willing to read one of those stories out? Yep.
We have a pain from ugly bright photo and groom looks drunk. Okay, we did a Kim persona.
Oh yeah, okay, yes.
So one of the
Groom looks drunk.
one of the things was to create private albums just for certain viewers. So
Okay.
they can still, one family can still enjoy how their
The drunken photos.
drunken photos,
But not everybody
not
sees it.
everybody,
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And a bride can gossip because I think we wrote it somewhere here.
The bride can gossip about
She
them.
likes to gossip. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It's
So
somewhere here on the same.
yeah.
page.
Okay. Then you can charge money for people to take those photos down.
Oh well, we didn't talk about that.
Any other stories that you came up with through doing the empathy maps?
We have the possibility to upload analog photos where we are scanning.
Oh, scanning photographs. Yeah. So like because you started to think about Jeff and the older generation, they probably would just have their photographs developed on paper. Yeah. Okay. And then so you need to think about more options. So okay. Yeah.
We also
had, Jeff, and we had something similar. So we thought about some kind of integration with the photographers that develop the film so they can just instantly upload it for you.
Oh, so there's a new market now, is that we actually go to the people who develop the photographs and they use this and they can, yeah, okay. They could offer it as an option. Exactly. Okay. So, I'm just, oh no, I'm going backwards. So, in these slides here, you can download if you want to. If you ever want to reference any of this stuff again, you can download it. But I do want to ask if, through doing the workshop, do you have more questions about user stories and about splitting user stories? Are there things that you want to use this last 5 minutes to ask about? Big silence. I notice nearly every talk, if there are people that say, are there any questions? There's no question. Okay. Do you think that if you are going to, who's going to be involved in writing some user stories sometime? Is there anything that we did today that could be useful in another setting?
Yes.
Yes. What?
This empathy.
So doing an empathy map might help. Yes. Or if you can't do an empathy map, having a conversation with the types of user, getting to see them and see them in their situation. Any other things that you would be able to take away and try? Okay. So, if you do have further questions, you can ask me after everybody else has gone away. After a few beers, yes, and I'll probably give different answers as well. But I guess the key things that I would like you to remember about user stories is if you always write as a user, you are missing the point of that story template. You have to think about what user that represents. So who is really going to use this? It's not just like as a user, right, I've done that bit of the user story. You have to think about their world and about the kinds of people who will be using the software and what unique needs they might have. There are types of users that may not be important to you at all. Like, for instance, if you're making a product which you have a particular business case for, there are people in the world that you don't actually care whether they like using this software. And so not all users are relevant sometimes to building a product. You have to pick key people who represent a wider group that you want to make sure the product works for. And so don't just think, well, any user will do. You know, there are some products which you make which are open to anybody in the public. But there are a lot of products which are for a particular business market, and you want to try to do user testing with people like them rather than just anybody off the street. So it's worthwhile trying to get user testing groups that represent the audience of the thing that you're building. And nearly always, with user stories, there is a way of breaking it down. So if anyone says, well, there's this user story and it's going to take us like 5 weeks to develop, then there will always be a way of doing something less, something smaller. And so you need to really challenge when stories are too big. But you were both having an argument about, could it be that stories are too small? And I think it's not the case that stories can be too small, because if you can deliver something small, then you can start testing and getting feedback. So don't worry about making the stories too small. Worry about breaking them down and them being too big. And I think you can always do that. Okay, so even though we had a bit of a crazy start to this session, I would like to wrap up there. Thank you very much. And there's a bunch of references in this, so if you do want to do some more reading, there is a lot of other different things you can find. Okay, thank you.